What up, player profiler faithful? It's Matty Kiwoom. Welcome to the latest episode of the Game Plan. First and foremost, subscribe to that player profiler YouTube channel if you're not already. And please take a minute to absolutely destroy the like button and leave a comment too. Just let me know what we get right and even what we get wrong here in this episode. And that's right, I did say we because I am joined by a very, very special guest. Matter of fact, I'm sitting down with one of the best guys overall in the business. We are diving into the 2023 rookie class, but specifically in best ball format. So, gang, get out your pens and your pads, and let's start game planning to properly place some value on this year's rookie class in best ball. Planners, today my guest is somebody that I've been personally very excited to sit down with for a while now. He is a fellow football D-Gen, and it is awesome just hanging out with him over at the fantasy football draft house we did in Kansas City a few months ago. That was a blast. He's a contributor to the Orange Bloods, which is the leading source in all things Longhorns, and he is not only the host of the Roster Watch podcast, but he's one of the founders of the entire operation. Hill Country's finest, Alex Dunlap. Alex, what's going on, man?
Yo, dude. How you been, brother? You been all right, man? You holding up okay? Right. You've been able to get by without eating all those ribs and stuff like that?
Well, funny that my wife makes a mean rib, so I've had my fair share of ribs.
I'll tell you, those Kansas City ribs are different. They're kind of good. They're kind of good. Looking back, well, I think it's more about the experience. It's the kind of cooked a little bit.
Let's start with the hot take, Alex. Let's start with a hot take. You said something in that van. What did you say?
I didn't say any. I didn't want to say anything then at the actual event because I didn't pay for. I didn't pay for the ribs. You know, it was somebody else. But those ribs looked like they felt like they were just cooked on like a propane grill. Like they didn't feel like they were smoked. They're just black on the outside with all, like the thing that made them taste good was all that sweet red sauce on top. That stuff
they had good barbecue sauce. Yes.
But I think that Kansas City barbecue might take a minute to get used to from somebody coming down in Texas.
They had, I mean, if I would to shell out some power rankings for what we were served that day, the ribs would not be in the first, second, third place even. They did do a great job with the barbecue, but the ribs, you're right, it wasn't my favorite. Matter of fact, Billy made some better ribs at the house a couple days later or a day
Billy's
later.
A G, dude. Billy,
dude.
Billy was it Billy Musio? He sent me just for those who might not know who we're talking about. He sent me a series of like Twitter videos in my DMs showing me exactly how to shuck oysters.
Yeah, you mentioned that. You're like, I need some videos on how to do it. And he's like, dude,
he had the technique. He followed through, man. The guy's a G.
Yeah, Billy's a G, makes a mean rib. I do remember you saying that Texas ribs were better than the KC ribs you had.
Yeah,
I've never had them.
Yeah.
Everything's better.
All the Central Texas, like all the craft barbecue in Central Texas, that's where it all came from. It's Aaron Franklin, the whole explosion across the country is right out of Central Texas.
Franklin's the place that the lines around the door, right? Like that's like the spot. Franklin's.
You gotta show up at like 5 a.m. Just go drink a bunch of beer.
Some lawn chairs, like a new release of a fucking
exactly.
Like,
yeah,
you're about my age. Remember Beanie Babies? Remember those? Dude, those things used to cause lines. I remember my aunt was into it, and she'd be like, "Yeah, but I got in line at like 5:30." I was like, and I'm 10, 12 years old. I'm like, what? You got up that early for a stuffed animal? Like, holy shit. And then of course we didn't save any of them. So the value but that's a podcast for another time. Alex, thank you so much for sitting down. I'm really excited to talk rookies in the best ball format. But before we do, I always like to surprise my guests with two quick questions. So how long have you been playing fantasy football? And then how would you describe your fantasy management style?
Okay. So my dad got me playing fantasy football. It's actually one of my dad's co-workers at a company he founded in Austin. And I think my first year playing was in 1995 or 1996. And that was a league where the commissioner, again, was my dad's co-worker. And that was a league where we got the commissioner like hand wrote out the scoring and sent it via snail mail. And so we didn't even know who won the matchups until Tuesday when it would come in the mail. But I remember it was always fun for me and my dad when he got home. I'd wait till my dad got home. We'd walk down there to the mail together and open up the letter and, see who won the matchups that week and stuff like that. So I've been playing a long time. I've been doing this professionally. I guess the radio show started in – was that the second question? What was the second question?
No, the second question was like, how would you describe your style? But yeah, go into it all.
My style. Okay. Your style. So I've been playing for that long. I've been doing this as a job since 2010. Syndicated on Sirius XM since 2013. My management style, I guess it's different in redraft than it is in Dynasty.
Right.
Simply because they're two different games. Very simply, in Dynasty, I'm very much of a win now player. I always want to win. I want to win every single year. I know that at Player Profiler, you guys have these new tools now where it's like the win now setting versus like in the Dynasty Deluxe, you have like the win now settings versus the rebuild settings and stuff like that. I've always told Matt and Cody and stuff when we had these conversations, to me, like at the very worst, I'm going to be in a productive struggle. I'm always trying to win now. I'm generally, for a guy like me, who is so into the rookies and watches them and goes and scouts them all and goes to the training facilities and talks to their trainers and their agents and sees them live and everything like that. I generally take a little bit of an approach to where I like to exploit the rookie fever that other people have in Dynasty rookie drafts and see if there's somebody who I can land who I already know is a proven NFL talent.
Right.
Instead of taking these guys with a first round pick. So that's kind of my strategy for Dynasty. My strategy for redraft has typically been, I just use the cheat sheet, man, the roster watch cheat sheet. I draft using that. I use all the products that we create for our in-season management. Those are things that I strictly adhere to. And it's very much about kind of the seasons within the season and the consolidation of your roster through the season to where when you finally make it to the playoffs, you've taken all the depth that you've managed to accumulate through the season. You've traded up at all these positions to where you can hopefully have a super team, and building that super team through the course of the season is sort of my MO. And a big part of that is, of course, through, being very active on waivers.
Right. And that's huge in redraft. Yeah. And
also, I think one thing that a lot of people just forget about in fantasy is that you have to get off to a fast start. People talk about building. I don't give a shit about the playoff schedule. I could literally care less. Like, it's like, Matt, you've looked at your teams like 12 weeks into the season, and they look absolutely nothing like the team that you drafted.
Every single year.
It's like Byron, my co-host and my business partner, Byron Lambert, always talks about. He's like, a fantasy football season's like, it's like when salmons come back home from, they come back home and they come up the river to
That's
come
when
back
the Bears
home.
Snatch them, right?
Yeah, or eagles or anything else like that. They get pecked on, that like their noses and their faces and their eyes and everything all falls off. They get back to where they all started and they die. And so it's like the whole time you're just a dying salmon, dude. You're trying to navigate the Bears and the Eagles and jumping over these egresses, and you're fighting against the current. Your nose is falling off, like, all this stuff, right? Through the course of the attrition of the season, the important thing to remember is all that depth, having 5 running backs when you only need to start 2. All that stuff, it's not going to help you past the trade deadline. You got to get that stuff consolidated. You have to build a super team. And so through the attrition of the season, that's generally what I'll strive to do as far as redraft. So for redraft, for me, it's getting off to a fast start. Getting off to a fast start is also important, because whenever you're 4-0 or you're 5-0, and there are other teams in your league that start, it's usually in week 4 when people start to get real panicky about their shitty teams.
Right.
And if they're 0-4, if they're 1-3, they're like, oh, Jesus, man. Like, if I lose 2 more games, 2 more, I'm going to be on the bubble for the playoffs for the whole rest of the season. I got to make some changes now. And that's when you can swoop in for trades, and you can just say, look, I'm here dealing from a position of strength. It's like I got this 4-0 football team. Like
Right.
I don't need to be picking off these crappy players that have led you to this 1-3 start. Like, so I mean, if we're gonna do business here, we're gonna be doing business here on my home court. You know, we're talking about my players that are more valuable than yours, and we're gonna get a deal done that might not make you happy, but it could make your team better. So those are I would say that those would be my core principles, but you know, fast start and redraft is probably the one that I care about the most.
Fast draft and reach, and me and Cody, when we talk about this a lot too, with Dynasty, even it's becoming such a algebraic, super difficult problem to solve. And I like to dumb it down to addition, subtraction. That's only what I can handle. I'm too dumb, so I like to just simplify. And winning now, those strategies are true throughout all formats. Throughout everything is winning now. You're trying to do the same thing. You're trying to, I fatten my bench in the off season so that I can kind of just sharpen my sword throughout the season and just keep dealing off depth. So, like you said, you have that roster where you're starting, maybe 2 or 3 top 12 receivers in your lineup, a top 12 running back. Like, you're truly a beast by the end.
You can't take them with you when you die, dude. Or I mean,
there it is.
You know what I'm saying? Like, you can't take all this stuff with you into the playoffs. You gotta load up, and you just gotta hope that you make it through for those 3 weeks.
Absolutely. But you mentioned that you do guys, over at Ross Watch, you guys crush it with the rookie coverage. Well, I want to talk rookies. But before we dive into the main subject of the show, let's hear from the Podfather as he talks about our Dynasty Dominator.
Now, I know many of you are looking for a secret weapon for your Dynasty League, and I have it. It's called the Dynasty Dominator app. You go to the App Store, go to Google Play. It's right there. It's $5 to download, and then every year it's $5 to load the next incoming class of rookies. You can add Superflex, add tight end premium. It's incredible because it allows you to look up players. It allows you to vote on whether a player is a buy, hold, or sell, and then see the market sentiment on that player. And you can compare their lifetime value rating from Player Profiler to their Dynasty ADP at the FFPC, all in the price lookup tool. And beyond that, we have a trade analyzer, so you'll never lose another Dynasty trade again. And in our settings, you can set this is a win now team, this is a rebuilding team, and then we let you compare players. Look at their metrics side by side, prospect metrics, NFL metrics. It's all there. It's $5 in the App Store. There's some add-ons for Superflex and to buy the upcoming rookie class. Every year, you're going to spend $5 on this thing, and it's going to be well worth it.
Jesus Christ,
man. No one does a better ad read than Pop. Let's call it.
I mean, do you know what Jerry Jones said that the sign of a best, like the sign of a best salesman is? Do you know what the best salesmen do? Just ask for the money. Just ask for the money.
Right. Cut the shit, ask for the money.
There is Matt just saying like it's $5, you're spend it every year, you're gonna love it. It's like
he's the best. And the Dynasty Dominator app, we talk about our Dynasty strategy. I use the shit out of it when I try to take it to the next level. So check it out. $5 every year, and you can stay up. And what's $5 when you're winning hundreds from your freaking idiot buddies in your leagues, right?
Yeah,
so,
man.
It is what it is. So, Alex, my first question to you is overall, is the 2023 rookie class good relative to their current ADPs in best ball?
I mean, I told you earlier, man, I'm a little as weird as it is to where, we at Roster Watch, we sort of positioned ourselves kind of early on as the ones that really took it to the streets and took it to the boots on the ground type of stuff for going and seeing all these guys and bringing the coverage of them. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of weird for me to say it, but I generally take a little bit of a cautionary approach to rookies. I mean, even in best ball this year, it's a little bit different because there's some guys that are going with ADPs that are actually starting to shift a little bit now. Right. Mm-hmm. But early on, I mean, if I just look at it right now, like, so if I go to drafts and I go to completed drafts, so I had probably before the NFL draft even occurred, it looks like I had on Underdog about, it looks like 27 of these that I had done even before then. And I feel like that was the time when I was really loading up on my Kendre Millers, my Roschon Johnsons. I think I had like 80% exposure to Kendre Miller before the NFL draft. Now, he's getting a little bit more expensive. I would just like to see, like, I wonder what my total exposure, like, I'll just tell. So let's just look at my total exposures here.
Okay.
Across. So the guys who have them, and this is interesting. So this is post NFL draft, right? Post NFL draft. So Tank Dell is my highest exposure just because I can get Tank Dell. He's going right now as wide receiver 87. So you can take him with, you get him for free. And one of the things about Tank Dell that I really like is in a lot of these best ball builds where I go 3 quarterback, a lot of the times CJ Stroud will be available there, 14th round, something like that. There's a super, super easy and cool way to create just a little mini stack where you can, your last few picks, you take John Mechie, CJ Stroud, Tank Dell, and all of a sudden now you have a whole nother stack option. There are a couple guys like that to where it's hard to find a quarterback and his primary associated pieces that you can get for, you can get that sort of stack equity even on a shitty team, right? But you can get that kind of stack equity that late in drafts, and you can complete it. After it looks like I have Tank in 47.8% of drafts. I have Jaden Reed in 43.5% of drafts. It's kind of a theme. He's going as wide receiver 71. Yeah. Jaden Reed is looking like he's probably going to be the number 2 wide receiver for that team. Let's see. As far as other rookies, so Bryce Young, I've taken as a 3rd quarterback. It looks like in 34.8% of leagues. I love Bryce Young. I feel like he's got good weapons around him. And as I go down here, it's funny, Matt, because you know me, none of these guys have really been my favorite through the process, and it's mainly just because of price. So much of these guys have, there's like Matt talks about, sometimes there's just a rookie fever, right? There's a rookie fever, and some of these guys, Devon A-Chain, I have 30% Devon A-Chain. Not sure how much I'm liking that now with all the rumors about Dalvin heading South Beach, down to Miami. I'm just scrolling here. This is an interesting one. Zach Evans at running back 64. I have him in 21.7% of drafts. I think those are the drafts where I get feeling a little bit squirrely at running back and want to go with a 5 or 6 running back build.
2 shots at the end, yeah.
Yeah. Let's see. Farther and farther down. Looks like I have Kendre in 17.4% of drafts. Kendre is now going as running back 44, which I still think is fine. And I hate to be the cliche guy that says it, but I really do view him as a better and best ball type of player, simply because in redraft leagues, I'm going to have plenty of Kendre Miller. I mean, he's been my running back 2 for, basically the entire process. But he is, he's going to be one of these guys that goes against my general redraft strategy of getting off to a fast start. So he might be one of these dudes who I let somebody else draft. I go in and swoop in after the bad start when they're 1-3, see if I get Kendre as a throw in one of those trades as far as redraft leagues. Other than that, I'm looking down here. We're getting down to like the 15% range. Oh, Roschon Johnson, 17.4%, going at running back 47. And then other than that, it's just kind of sprinkles of these guys, like sub 10% portions of guys like Tyjae Spears. I think that Cody has a really good take about Tyjae Spears in Dynasty versus in redraft this season, where he doesn't like him in Dynasty because of the completely messed up knee, but in redraft, he'd probably be fine for at least this year. Josh Downs, sub 10%, Rashee Rice, all these guys. So it's funny, man. You don't hear me mention Bijan. I don't have much Bijan.
Well, that was actually going to be my follow-up question, because I can't have Mr. Alex Dunlap on and not talk about the former Texas Longhorn. So my question is, with him going off the board as running back 2, which is rich, are you excited about that? Are you willing to take that plunge? We know that Atlanta likes to run the ball, but it's not always with just one guy. So what are your thoughts on Bijan in best ball formats right
now? I mean, I gotta let me think about this. So there's a million ways I can go when I talk about Bijan Robinson.
Of course. We all know he's good for the community.
Yeah.
So in your points per community helping league, he's dominant. All over
points per can of soup donated. Yeah,
you get 3 points for walking the old lady across the street. Those leagues, you want them.
Yeah. I'll say this about Bijan. First thing I'll say is that an underdog where he's going at he goes at 7 overall in these underdog things. I now have the PPR version up of the Roster Watch, the Ultimate Draft cheat sheet, which I hate to say it because I care about all these products, but the ultimate draft cheat sheets for the redraft, the season-long managed leagues, that's our most important product because that's what all the regular people still all play, right? That's like for every underdog sheet that gets downloaded, there will eventually be like 40 of the redraft sheets that get downloaded just because that's what the normies do and that's what they want.
The normies, that's when we've graduated. Talk about those normies.
Yeah, right. Well, I mean, they're
those cashies.
Yeah, I mean, there are people who just love to, and those guys can be good, man. Those guys and gals can be good, but you tell them what best ball is, and they're just like, man, what you're drafting fantasy teams in April? It's like, what's wrong? February.
Yeah. But the NFL hasn't even started. It's not even close.
I like him. I've been getting him more in those redraft simulations using the early managed season-long ADP because you can get him at the turn. Mm-hmm. I think 7 is just too. It's a little too early, man. And it's not just the fact that I'm not sure about the quarterback. It's not the fact that I'm not even sure about the entire offense. I mean, there's certainly things that go on Bijan's side. One, he could be LaDainian Tomlinson. One, so of course, that's the biggest thing. 2. The offensive line there has a few of the favorite guys that I've scouted, as far as coming out. They got like guys like McGarry, they got Chris Lindstrom and they were actually a really good run blocking unit last year, right? Mm-hmm. So that's something that I really love. Of course, Bijan, the draft capital, they're going to need to play him. But I did see just this week from OTAs, they were asking the running backs coach, they're like, well, how do you deal with the fact that you had a record-breaking rookie last year, 1,000-yard rusher last year, in Tyler Algier? What's the constitution of that running back room? And he said, look, man, if you think you're going to have a guy that's going to be like the main carries guy or the guy who's going to be the main dude toting the rock and all, he's like, I have news for you. Those days are over. That isn't how this is going to work. We're not going to be looking at it to like get this guy all the carries here, this guy all the carries here. Like we want these guys to all have long careers, blah, blah, blah. It's the same stuff. It sounds like coach speak, but it's actually kind of true. It's the way the NFL teams are moving. Right. That's why you see on Underdog, there's only 2 running backs that go in the first rounds of these drafts. Like Jonathan Taylor's going like the 201 usually, the 202 stuff like this. Tony Pollard, who's going to be a great Nick Chubb. These guys are going to be great players this year. Barkley. You know what I'm saying? Like you can get all these guys in the second round of these drafts. People are crazy about wide receivers, and I get it. It's a more sophisticated player over there on Underdog. The structure over there on Underdog, whenever they're letting guys like Aaron Jones and Joe Mixon and all these others fall to the 6th round. I mean, it makes sense to get your wide receivers early, even if they're on net, not going to be scoring along the same way. Simply because for one, you got to start more of them, and for 2, it's just that's the way that the game over there is being played right now. And I can get it. But to me, Bijan is one of those, it's Bijan and Christian McCaffrey. Like those are the 2. We haven't really, we haven't seen Bijan play yet. We don't know how this timeshare is going to work. So if we're looking at an ADP that I think is ADP in the season long early ADP data from early redraft leagues in PPR at the very least, where I've made the cheat sheet. I've done thousands of simulations using early ADP data across all the different sites and brought in the ratings queue, like the rankings queues from ESPN, Yahoo, like the stuff that all the auto drafters are going to use, right? They're just going to pick the highest guy
all the queues will be on top.
So I bring all those in. I bring in the rankings from Fantasy Pros that a bunch of people look at, like all that stuff, right? And then I run the simulations, and you can get Bijan more at the turn. I just feel like he's better priced there. I think in best ball, he's a little bit high right now on Underdog, especially it's only a half-point PPR site. The one thing I will say about Bijan in an Underdog type of setting or in a best ball setting, again, the old cop out, he's going to have big games. He's going to have really big. He's going to have spike weeks. I don't know I don't know if there's. I mean, is there that much? Can we really project that much of a difference between what Bijan is projected to do this year and what Tony Pollard is projected to do? I mean, if you put it down and you actually run the projections, I'm sure that this is something that Billy and Theo and those guys have been arguing about over their spreadsheets and stuff like that in, Slack channel. I'm sure that they're saying the same thing I'm saying, because I mean, we have similar methodologies. There's not that much that goes into this. It's like, it looks pretty similar. There shouldn't be that big a discrepancy as far as ADP. It just has to do with the excitement about the new toy.
The new toy, and it's not just the new, it is like the premier.
The shiniest, best new toy. I mean,
it's as like good of a prospect as, Saquon comps.
And Matt, Matt, look, all right, but look, but see, I led it off by saying, here's the one thing. He could be LT. And so, right. Like, that's kind of the thing is, so that's kind of where the discrepancy comes. But
the talent, if you're talking about a Madden video game where you get to dictate his usage, there maybe not be a more talented back, but he goes to an offensive situation where you said there was a 1,000-yard rusher. That's in his second year. He's not an old player. They still love themselves some Cordell Patterson. So as long as he's on that roster, I can't expect Bijan to be the only guy in the backfield that has a pass catching role. And I would express this. You mentioned Christian McCaffrey. As great as McCaffrey was, he was running back 12 in his rookie season. I know that's great. I'm not saying that's bad, but when you're taking a guy at the 109, 1010, you don't want him to finish as running back 12 on a points per game basis.
No, man. Yeah, no. That would be a disastrous outcome for Bijan if he finished as running back 12 after being taken at 7 overall. I guess it's within the realm of possible. Bijan's so good. I think
he is good.
To me, it's just the discrepancy. It's mainly from, look, you got Nick Chubb, who finally has Kareem Hunt the hell out of there, who's got a whole surrounding system that's gotten better. Deshaun Watson, that to my eyes looks much more on point than we'd seen it all last year. Improved offense. Talk about more of a role in the receiving game. The first time that we've ever seen him to where he's going to be a snap participant and a touch share leader, unlike we've seen, and he's probably the best pure runner in the whole National Football League. You have Tony Pollard, who's drastically improved his situation as well. These are guys, when you think about McCaffrey, and I think with Jonathan Taylor, there's two sides to that argument. It's like Matt would probably talk about the RG3 Alfred Morris corollary, I'm sure, with opening up the zone lanes via the zone read and things like that. But you can also poke some holes in that and say, well, what if Anthony Richardson really takes a whole lot of time? What if that offense just presents the systemic risk of not really being that good, not being in scoring position that often? And when they do get down in there, you have this fucking robot at quarterback. We
saw Cam Newton do that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, with him, I guess it can go both ways, but you have Barkley in year 2 with Dable sort of coming into the prime of his career where he's going to be very, very, very motivated to go make some money. So, I can't believe I'm here. I would never be the one to rail against Bijan Robinson.
Right.
It's just I find that there's excellent cases to be made for some of these other guys, and maybe not as much of a downside possibility. Now, granted, the first thing I wanted to say, this could be an LT situation where none of that stuff
doesn't matter. Bijan, it's really this. It's the thought exercise of talent versus the game that we play, which is fantasy football, whether it be best ball or rookie draft. Well, rookie draft's totally a beast. He's the 101, in that format. But when you're talking about a full-on draft startups and whatnot, it's not that Bijan's not talented. I think we both think he's super talented. He's going to be really, really good in the National Football League. One of the best prospects we've seen at his position in this sport. But I actually did take him at the 109 in a best ball redraft seasonal league. And it wasn't that I regretted Bijan at the 109. It's as I saw the pattern of the second, third, fourth rounds, that is when I started to truly regret my Bijan pick, when all of this value was sitting there in the 4th round. Josh Jacobs is sitting there, and Josh Jacobs had a career season and has really never been worse than running back 15 on any given year. When you see all these running backs just slide down the rounds, you're going, why the fuck did I waste a pick on the running back? And it has that is not an indictment on his talent or his skills one iota. But when you see, this is the year of zero RB. The zero RB, that community just did so many victory laps because of how the 2022 season played out. All your normies, all your casual fantasy gamers are employing the zero RB strategy. It is the blanket strategy everyone is using. So with that being the case, you see this massive run of receivers. If you go Bijan at 109, you are going to be now just either deciding, screw it, I'm completely zigging, and I'm going to take 2 or 3 of these nasty running backs, or you're going to be just the fat elephant at the end of the stampede, just kind of picking up whatever you can.
No, I mean, the fat elephant at the end of the stampede. That's funny. It's good. That's all interesting to me. I mean, I'd push back a little bit and say I'm not sure by the time we get into redraft season, but the true redraft season, we're not there yet. That stuff doesn't
that's August.
Yeah, well, it's into July, or like around the time of the Hall of Fame games when people start getting. That's when you start seeing like the signups on your website and stuff. People come,
when they're practicing with helmets on.
People filtering back in, kind of emailing you about, hey, when's this cheat sheet getting updated? Like when people start to care again.
You see the spot, yeah.
But I think by the time we get into sort of that like redraft season in earnest, right? People are going to go back to this stuff. This stuff is not going to stay the same, Matt. Whenever we get into like the true redraft season, and I'm seeing it, like I'm looking right now at the best ball cheat sheet versus just the PPR cheat sheet, and how much differently you have to stack the tiers of running backs, because the thirst for running backs is always going to exist in redraft leagues. People do not want to be stuck going into the season without, some kind of running back depth that they can depend on. And I don't think we're going to keep on seeing things happen like guys like DJ Moore and Brandon Ayuk and, Jackson Smith and Jigba and stuff. Christian Kirk going ahead of guys like Aaron Jones, Joe Mixon, Dameon Pierce, J.K. Dobbins. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah. I don't think that can keep up. The reason why I think that that's happening right now with the ADPs on Underdog is simply because of the way that people are choosing to build on Underdog right now. And the way that we can take advantage of that is by saying, all right, we're going to roll a little bit along with this, but realize like this running back dead zone we've talked about for these last couple of years, all this stuff, throw that out the window. Like that does not exist anymore. That's the way that these things have gone. It's gone too far. And when you're running back dead zone, your so-called dead zone is basically, what do they say? Rounds 3 through whatever, rounds 3 through 7 or something. Yeah. I mean, you got Travis Etienne in there. You got Breece Hall, Ramondre Stevenson. You got Najee Harris, Dalvin, who, clearly, that's a whole other, whole other deal with him about how to value Dalvin. But I mean, Miles Sanders, now Alexander Madison's going to be up in that mix. Mixon, Jahmyr Gibbs. He's
Gibbs is skyrocketing for sure, yeah.
But he's going to be a dead zone type of running back, right? I mean,
he's going to be in that thick of it. Yeah, he's going to be in that rounds for sure.
Yeah, and then there's even like a post dead zone. There's the J.K. Dobbinses, the Dameon Pierces, the Rashad Whites, the David Montgomerys, the Javonte Williamses.
That's
Cam Akers, Pacheco. You know what I mean? James Cook. So that group really doesn't exhibit its first fall off until you get to guys like kind of the perspective, like basically the rookies, A-Chain, Charbonnet, Antonio Gibson, who I think is a really good value right now.
Right. Yeah. He still is good value.
Kendre Miller. Like there's a Roschon. So there's a bunch of these dudes who you can get late. And the reason you can get them late is because of the wide receiver thirst. So with that being said, I'll go with the wide receiver thirst so I can help build and help my users to build a well-balanced roster as the sheet is designed to do. With that being said, I think when it comes to regular redraft, if any of this stuff trickles in, and it will trickle in because so many of the influencers in the fantasy space are big best ball guys, and some of this wide receiver stuff is going to trickle over. I think whenever we get to true redraft season-long managed leagues, that's when we can really leverage this and say, all right, you guys want to start out with Stephon Diggs and CeeDee Lamb at the turn, and then come back and take your DK Metcalf and then take your first running back. Well, I have news for you. I'm going to take 3 running backs, and so by the time you get there, Breece Hall,
those guys are
like Najee. None of those guys are going to be available to you.
Right.
They're not going to be available to you. If you want to do this cockamamie bullshit, you can do it, but you're going to be staring down the barrel of having Miles Sanders as your goddamn RB1. I
love you, dude. You just talked me off a little bit of a ledge, Alex, because I had, like you said, we're not in the thick of all the casual leagues. The casual home leagues that I'm in, our drafts are in August. I got time, but I would have been full-fledged getting all the receivers early. But now you're right. Why not pivot a little bit, get stupid value on running backs, and then when the injury bug goes bananas, all of a sudden everyone is going to be giving up first-round receivers for running backs in your casual league. So I like where your head's at. I like this little maneuverability, baby.
And there's good value. And look, I'm not sure this is how it's gonna happen. This is just how I'm projecting it's gonna happen. I could be totally wrong. But if it does happen where people keep drafting this way, that they're drafting in underdog, right? You could legit start out with Nick Chubb, Tony Pollard, Derrick Henry, and your wide receiver one could be like, you can still have a good wide receiver one like Calvin Ridley or Deebo Samuel or so, you know what I'm saying? Something like that.
Yeah, Christian Kirk, Chris Godwin.
And then just go wide receiver for a couple picks. Make sure to get your, undervalued guys like your Treylon Burkses or your guys that nobody's going to feel sexy picking, like Tyler Lockett.
Juju Smith-Schuster.
Next thing you know, dude, you're looking down at a monster.
Yeah, and in best ball formats too, like I've been trying to get into the swing of things a little bit more with best ball. I admittedly that's not one of my favorites, so I've been really excited to talk to you about it and talk to anyone who will talk about best ball because I'm trying to get better. Actually, I got roasted on one of our shows. I submitted my lineup and he picked it apart because it sucked. So when you're building these best ball teams, are you kind of just playing by the rules that are set by all these draft rooms where you are going to go receiver early, or are you saying, fuck it, I don't care, give me the running backs and we'll try to pick up that value late on the Tyler Lockett's, on the Juju Smith-Schusters a little bit later?
Well, I mean, for underdog where I play, I'm not going to pretend like I play any, I play at underdog. So that's sort of where my experience lies. I'll take either 4 or 5 running backs.
Mm-hmm.
I'll take either 7, 8, or 9 wide receivers. I will take either 2 or 3 quarterbacks and either 2 or 3 wide receivers, or in either 2 or 3 tight ends. Mm-hmm. And the 2 or 3 quarterbacks just has to do with if I see a stack developing late. Lately, it's been the CJ Stroud stack, but you can also get the Bryce Young stack. I mean, his associated pieces are very, very cheap. None of these best ball bros want to take Adam Thielen. He's too old. They like these guys. Yeah. Think about these best ball guys as the guys like us, who's like nobody gets excited to take Adam Thielen. You know what I'm saying? Like nobody is going to be excited I'm not excited to take him. He's old. He's probably
it's not exciting. No,
like his analytic numbers have come down every year. But would you be that? Would you be that? Surprised if he had, say, 6 usable weeks where he cracked your optimal lineup? I mean, like it wouldn't be that surprising.
Not at all. I think you
could 8 touchdowns this year. Like, I mean,
that's my point. Like he's going to have a couple of 2-touchdown games.
Right. So, I mean, it would feel like he would have at least some games where he's usable. Mingo, you can always get him late. Terrace Marshall's going undrafted. Hayden Hurst is going undrafted. Like, so that Bryce Young stack and stuff, I'll go a third quarterback then. I'll go a third quarterback if I see the CJ Stroud stuff opening up, because like I talked about it, I love that Tank Dell, CJ Stroud, the John Mechie.
Be honest, is that because of Trash Man? Trash Man was big Stroud. On Tank.
Oh, yeah.
Did he sway you?
Yeah, kind of. Well, it's not just that. It's also CJ Stroud himself just saying, like, this is the guy, man. This is the guy I wanted. This is the dude I wanted. There's lately I've been kind of getting a little bit interested in Tyquan Thornton, just with all the buzz around him. We're talking about a sub 4.3 guy, and you can get that Mac Jones, Tyquan Thornton stack at the very end of your draft. So those are the times when I would go with the 3 quarterbacks. But what I read out, the running backs, 4 to 5 of them, wide receivers, 7 to 9 of them, quarterbacks, 2 to 3. Tight ends 2 to 3, and just from my experience doing this, from putting together these sheets, you're asking the general overall strategy. I can't get those 7 to 9 wide receivers unless I do dabble into them earlier than I would like to. But I'm not going to do anything where it just makes 0 sense. I can't in my right mind take, just say like Jackson Smith and Jigba, who I loved as a prospect, or Michael Pittman, who I'm worried as hell about, or DJ Moore, who I'm worried as hell about, over, Aaron Jones. Or it doesn't, that doesn't make any sense to me. Now it makes sense to me when I'm like, okay, I'm staring down the barrel of Devontae Smith versus Derrick Henry or something. Whereas my heart is screaming at me saying, what the hell are you talking? You taking the number 2 wide receiver versus Derrick Henry, who's like, even in PPR, it gets you a 25 plus fantasy point game. He's not even a PPR guy, but he gives you a 25 plus fantasy point game 40% of the time over the last 2 years. But in that spot, I'll be like, well, at least Devontae Smith, at least I know I'm getting a stud wide receiver here. He's a stud. To me, it's not egregious. There's Tony Pollard that's getting into a much better position now than we would have ever hoped for, right? And if he's up against one of my favorite receivers in the league, one of my favorite prospects ever, Chris Olave, that's a point where I could take Olave. I could take him because maybe Pollard will slip. And I can get him later. Or, you know what? Maybe he doesn't slip, but I'll be able to get one of these other guys just a little bit later. I think that's a long way of answering your question about how I navigate it with all these early wide receivers. If it doesn't feel egregious to me, if it's like, man, this is a really good player, I'm choosing here between 2 really good players. That's when you'll ride the wave a little bit. Receiver early, right? Because I know that they're running backs dead zone, pseudo dead zone, post dead zone, and then super post dead zone rookie upside studs that I want on a lot of my teams, like Roschon Johnson, most specifically Kendre Miller, who you can get a lot later, and then super life preserver types later on, like your Zach Evans, who you might get 1 or 2 usable weeks out of.
So pin that in your mind, because I want to get back to that. But I want to talk about this because you teased it a little bit. But Breece Hall, the Bryce Young stack. So you can go rookie to rookie. Breece Hall, why do I keep saying Breece Hall? Bryce Young to Jonathan Mingo. Mingo's going around wide receiver 60. Is he an alpha? Can he provide that wide receiver 1 type of output on that offense with a fellow rookie and Bryce Young?
Yeah, well, here's the thing. We got to remember that Bryce Young's awesome. So it's like people worry about how short he is and everything like that. To me, it's with the way that he can operate, to just, you can go back and just watch him. I watch a ton of the Alabama tape just because I love to watch good players. And also, you got to see some of the stuff, especially from the spring games and things earlier when Steve Sarkisian was there and the things he was doing before he got to Texas. And just what I've seen as a close observer of that program over the last couple of years is that Bryce Young's awesome. And he finds himself in spots where he's like, he's just a natural at finding these windows and stuff. Like he's a really natural quarterback who doesn't necessarily need to get off platform to use his mobility to get in spots where he can make all the right throws. So could Mingo be that good? Mingo has turned out to be a better prospect than I had thought he was going to be. What Cody and I always talked about with Jonathan Mingo is, look, is he going to be, he's this big Ole Miss wide receiver who's 225 pounds, who played a lot out of the slot. And so the question is he A.J. Brown or is he Dontario Drummond, right? And the answer we came to the Senior Bowl was like, well, he's kind of neither, right? He's kind of neither. Yeah. He doesn't seem to be
a little bit.
He doesn't seem to be an A.J. Brown. He certainly is not as bad as a Dontario Drummond. Thank God. Going through the process, I don't have my sheet pulled up, but this is all. But I think he ran a 4.46.
He did. Yep, 77 percentile. Yep.
Yeah, so it's like he had a good process, and he was more valued by teams than we would have generally thought. What has me a little bit hesitant about him is simply the fact that there's this weird drumbeat out of Carolina for Terrace Marshall right now. And I don't know if that's just them kind of considering.
That has started through the whole process. Didn't they say something at the combine when you guys were there? They made a point to bring him up out of nowhere, seemingly.
Yeah, and then Joe Person, who I think is probably the best beat writer on that there in that city, is, I was reading in The Athletic the other day about, somebody asked about something, and just in passing, he said, and then there's also Terrace Marshall, who they're hoping they can step up to be their number one this year. And just, this kind of random Terrace Marshall stuff. So I don't know what that means about, how Mingo is looked. There's also, I think that Miles Sanders is going to see an uptick in some of his stuff this year, as far as, just what we've seen from Bryce Young, the way that he can deliver the football to his running backs. We saw it in spades last year with Jahmyr Gibbs. We also know that who's the most common comparison that we get for Bryce Young? It's Drew Brees, who's the all-time best screen game quarterback for running backs that we've had in fantasy football. So it could be a little bit of thing where he could get squeezed for targets at first. And Mingo was one of the guys who, there was a question that you sent about who might be going a little early. I think Mingo might be actually kind of going a little bit early, Matt.
Okay.
So what'd you just say he was? Wide receiver?
Right around wide receiver 60-ish. I think it's 58 on some, and some. I think around wide receiver 50 to 58, 60.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm not looking at the ADPs. I'm looking at my exposures, and it makes sense. I have 0 Jonathan Mingo.
He's like, why he's not going to draft?
That's why I couldn't find him. Okay, yeah. So wide receiver 59, 130 ADP. And so if we just look at some of the wide receivers who are going after him, who are rookies, we have it's easier to go over the list of guys who are even going ahead of him. JSN's only going ahead of him. Jordan Addison's going ahead of him.
Of course.
Quentin Johnston's going ahead of him. Zay Flowers is going ahead of him. And that might be it. Yep. And then Mingo. So he's basically rookie wide receiver 5. And I don't think that the landing spot is enough for me to say. He's a guy I had ranked in like my top 10 or something like that. But is the Carolina landing spot enough to boost his, boost what we think about him as an actual talent from his talent profile, to boost him up kind of 5 spots from what we thought of him, completely agnostic of his team?
No.
Like I can see why Rashee Rice is the next guy off the board with the wide receiver 60 ADP. Now I can see why he's a guy who I had ranked like 12, and I can see why somebody would say like, oh, he was 12 before, but now he's in KC. Let's bump him up to the 6th spot.
Right.
But so like what's up? But why are we not having a conversation about Jaden Reed, who's like now? I mean, he's locked into 3 wide receiver sets. He got the second round draft capital. He's a guy who I had ranked higher than all of these guys, and now they're saying he could play outside too. He just doesn't need to play out of the slot. He's already a better he's a much better football player than Romeo Doubs right out of the gate.
Oh,
he walks into that wide receiver room, and he's the automatic, no doubt, absolutely take it to the fucking bank, write it down on Sharpie across the top of my forehead, the second best wide receiver that the Packers have. So
I'm going to hold you to that. I'm going to make someone write that across your forehead.
Why is he going at wide receiver 71? Marvin Mims in Denver. I mean, the first pick of the whole Sean Payton era is going at wide receiver 73. So yeah, to me, Mingo, I think he can be fine. I don't understand why this landing spot has just juiced him up so much to where he's going in relation to some of these other rookies that I'm more interested in, 10, 12 wide receiver spots earlier.
I agree. I completely agree on the Mingo front. The ADP right now is just not where I want to be taking him. There are plenty of players in or even behind him. Like Tank Dell, you mentioned him at the top of the show. Give me that Tank Dell a little bit later. I think give me the guy who has 2,600 receiving yards in his last 2 years at Houston. Give me someone who's a mega producer, who his quarterback said, can we trade up here in the 3rd round to get? But what I think about the Mingo thing, I think why he gets so much hype is the Panthers knew that the 208 was going to be a receiver. They did not have another pick until, was it the 3rd, like late 3rd or whatever. So people kind of knew if they took a receiver, it was because they wanted to partner up with Young to be that connection over the long term. But my pushback on that is this. To your point, Young is very good. He's a competent, very, very good quarterback. He's small, but he's a great distributor. He showed that in college. I think people have already forgotten that he was the greatest or the most prominent, hyped high school prospect quarterback that Alabama's program has ever had, right? He was right. I want to say that Bryce, he was like the premier prospect going into Alabama, the most hyped quarterback they've ever had going into their program.
I mean, he's an incredible player. Like I said, man, you can even watch back those old spring games and stuff.
Right.
You know, like
you start right away. He's very good.
Right. There's stuff that you can see it's very like, I mean, people like they want to talk about how small he is, and I get it. He's not tall, but like literally find me another knock.
That's the truth. And he's been small his whole career. It's not like
he's small. It's like,
he's
all right,
not all
fine.
of a sudden, wait, I'm small?
Got it.
He has the skill set around it.
I defer to you. He's small. Find me another knock.
I'm with you. And I also, that's to my point about the Mingo thing, is he's a distributor. So if Mingo does not fire right away, he will start relying upon Hurst and Thielen and even going more deep to Shark. He can make the ball, he can pass the ball around. So Mingo at, wide receiver 60 to me is a little bit too rich for my blood. Now, I do want to talk about these later round running backs, or just running backs, rookie running backs in general. Your Roschons, your Kendre Millers, the guys you mentioned earlier. What are your kind of overall thoughts on them? And are their ADPs currently fair, a little overpriced, or underpriced?
Well, I mean, I think that they're fair. I think that Kendre Miller was a guy who, if people were using our stuff before the draft, I mean, you're going to be happy you got so much Kendre Miller with your last. People weren't taking Kendre Miller. Right. I couldn't believe it in Dynasty. People weren't even talking about him in the top tens and stuff. I'm like, he could end up being he could end up being the second best, probably not second best, but I mean, certainly third best running back in this class. You know what I mean? Like it's kind of fairly obvious to me, but nobody else is saying it. So
people don't tend to like, I guess, 5'11", 215-pound running backs that had 1,400 rushing yards. They probably just don't like those guys.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Those guys suck, Alex.
Like with all the best underlying metrics and the absolute heartbeat of a team that had a historical season unlike anything they've ever had before, simply because they were
I don't want those guys, Alex.
Runner that looked like a maniacal Kareem Hunt when he was back at Toledo. It's like, are you kidding me? But no, but I think that his ADP is Kendre's ADP now, running back 44, 134 overall. So you're gonna have to take him. He's gonna, if you get to the 11th round or something and you want him and he's still there, you're gonna have to take him there. It's not round 17 anymore. Roschon Johnson, you usually more of a guy you can feel safe taking in the 12th round. That to me feels perfectly fine. Not getting quite as much Tajay Spears, certainly. I mean, Chase Brown's going a little bit later. With some of this stuff, man, like with the Joe Mixon stuff, I've been taking the angle of I don't think anything's going to come of it. With that being said, you never know what could come of it. I could see maybe starting to take some shots on Chase Brown if things start to get a little bit squirrely there with him. I think now with the he's a guy I hadn't considered much at all, but with the Dalvin Cook news, Dwayne McBride's probably somebody I need to rethink just a little bit about how he fits into that situation there with Alexander Madison and with Ty Chandler for the Vikings. And then other than that, man, as I'm looking down here, I mean, I don't have any interest in like Izzy Abanikanda.
No way. You can't. That landing spot it nuked his value.
Somebody who I've gotten a little bit of is Evan Hull. In Indy, because he has a final round ADP, and if you get really screwed at running back and you want to maybe swing for the fences with somebody like him, I mean, I would never want to jinx an injury, but if anything were to happen to Jonathan Taylor, Evan Hull has the skill set to not only kind of come in and maybe be an immediate kind of 1B to him, but also he's shown that he can stand up to some volume between the tackles. I mean, he would come in and he would be a very if JT got hurt week 1, 2023, people would be blowing $200. It would
be 100%. Yeah,
he'd be on the waiver wire. For sure. Yeah, for Evan Hull. I mean, so I think
massive.
Yeah, so I think that he makes sense. And then the other guy I mentioned earlier, just somebody just along the same lines. This is more of a long play, but Cam Akers has shown for the Rams. He's shown that, man, it's been a real up and down affair for him. And he's also shown that organization enough to where that organization seems to feel no real commitment to him. It feels like when he falls into their laps with something good happening, he begins to play well. They kind of get back on his side, but it doesn't feel like he has any institutional buy-in from McVay and from Les Snead. They
looked to trade. They tried to trade him like 3 times.
He doesn't even need. He didn't even need to get hurt. He could just get benched. And so
he really could. Yeah, absolutely.
So I think Zach Evans at some point will be, he'll be somebody who I'll be on my SiriusXM show next year. And I guarantee you it'll be Saturday afternoon and I'll get a call and they'll be like, should I start in my flex? Should I start Zach Evans or so-and-so? And I'll have to, there'll be some weeks where he'll be a thing.
You can see the outs there.
Yeah. So I think that towards the end, as far as running backs, those would be the guys that I'd be interested in taking a stab on. I'm sure I've left somebody out, but those are the ones that kind of come to me off the top of my head.
Well, the guy I did want to bring up, he's going around, running back 55 right now in Underdog, is Tank Bigsby. I like the prospect in Tank Bigsby, and the echoes that are coming from Jacksonville OTAs is not really super endorsing of Travis Etienne.
Yeah, but I mean, Travis Etienne's still there, and why take Tank?
For sure.
But why take Tank ahead of Roschon?
Well, I don't know if I would take him ahead of Roschon. I guess maybe I'm in a lot of drafts where Roschon is gone earlier than Tank, so maybe it's just really my own bias here. But I mean, gun to my head, I'm taking Roschon, but I think Roschon does have a higher ADP right now, doesn't he? In Underdog, I think it's a little bit higher.
Roschon. Man, do you know what? I don't know if this is I could be looking at my CSV upload here. This could be because my CSV, I like my users, I give them a CSV upload that they can put right into Underdog.
Yeah.
So when I'm looking at the ranking, where you click on the rankings tab, I might be seeing my rankings.
It's all right. I mean, just for the conversation, I think I would say I would go with Roschon, but if when Roschon's off the board, I'd rather have Bigsby over Spears. I would certainly rather have Bigsby over Abanikanda,
it looks no. So this is actually, these are the real rankings. All right. So, because I have Cup ahead of Tyreek Hill. And so these rankings have Hill ahead of Cup. So these are the right ones. So yeah, and actually right now, and these update every 2 days. So it's
they're super up on it. Yeah.
So, but right now, Tank Bigsby, I think he's gotten, his ADP is 145. Roschon's is now 146.4. So he's going one. He's going one.
It kind of shifts in the night, probably. In the last few, you're seeing a lot of that. You're seeing more hype for Bigsby and a little bit more fading of Roschon. So they probably
do you see that? But to me, that's more of a kind of like a red flag for ETN than it is a let's go flag for Bigsby. If that makes any sense, it could be a situation where Tank Bigsby, his production, it's enough to really bite into what you wanted from ETN. But my fear would be that it's not enough to where it's what you want for your running back as far as your fantasy squad.
Yeah, no, that is a good point. That maybe it's the news coming from the OTAs in Jacksonville is not so much let's put it behind Tank Bigsby, but let's weigh down Travis Etienne earlier in drafts. That's actually a good way. I never really thought of it in that kind of perspective. That's a good way to think about it, because maybe it doesn't mean that Bigsby's going to get more touches. It just might mean Travis Etienne's not going to be unlocked to the degree that we would want at that point.
Yeah, I'm certainly worried about ETN. That's a whole different pot. Yeah.
We'll have you on again to talk about ETN worries. But let's wrap the show up about Roschon. Let's talk about Johnson a little bit, because I think here at Player Profiler, obviously roster wise, we've been kind of higher on Roschon than a lot of others. So I've always had some hype behind him. I've always been excited to take him. I've always tried to make trades in my rookie drafts to get him. But now we're starting to see his ADP sink a little bit, because I don't know if the Khalil hype is starting to get higher because he's getting reps with the ones at OTAs. But what's your just thoughts on Roschon? And then how do we bring that into, tie that into the best ball draft? So are you taking him there and everything?
Yeah, I'm trying to get him as much as I can, man. I really am. The main question with Roschon in these best ball drafts, the reason I don't have 40% exposure to him is simply because what we talked about earlier, as far as the structure of these things. There's a lot of times whenever I'm at the very beginning of these things, I don't want these best ball underdog type of 0 RB drafters to have their cake and eat it too. I'm going to zig when they zag. And if they're going to leave me with an elite running back build, by the time I get to Roschon Johnson, there are spots there are players like where they're going right now. I'm simply going to be getting a ton of them. And right now that's been Aaron Jones. It's been Alexander Madison. It's been Joe Mixon. I've been getting a lot of Miles Sanders. So if I'm getting a couple of, and those are priced in on the sheet to where that like, you take them at value, but golly, it's like if the value presents itself to you, whenever you have a choice between one of those guys and some dude like, Marquise Brown, who I don't even know if is Colt McCoy going to be his quarterback this year? Is he going to be the kid
Clayton Tune? I have no idea.
Kid from U of H. Is that even their backup? Is it Clayton Tune, U of H?
They have Tune, they have McCoy, and then they have Driscoll, I think it is. One of the kids that's just going to run.
I mean, Kyler Murray didn't he tear his ACL in December?
Yeah, it was during the Patriots game in week 12, something like that.
Marquise Brown is a specialized weapon who needs a good quarterback who's going to be able to get him the football. He's not a DeAndre Hopkins who's going to make it easy on anybody. He just isn't. So, just say something like that. Like I'm not gonna reach for a Marquise Brown over one of those running backs who I just listed simply because it makes my roster look good to start. So by the time I get to Roschon, right, I'm going to be looking at players who have been sort of left to the scrap heap. I'm going to be looking at like Elijah Moore, and I'll be looking at like the Gabe Davises, or I guess Gabe Davis will be gone. But I'll be looking at guys who
I know what you're saying though.
Guys who I can
if you have stud running backs, you're not looking for late round running backs.
Yeah, I'll be getting my late round wide receivers that I like. I'll be getting my Jaden Reeds and my Van Jeffersons, my Tyquan Thorntons, and some of my Sky Moores, like these upside players. To where it's like, does it look as good as the rest of this stuff if you started out with a more balanced deal? No. Like, is it optimal to kind of be like that? Well, probably not. I would like it to be a little bit more balanced at the beginning, so at the end, I can stay within that 4 to 5 running back allocation that I've told myself that I'm going to stick within. Right. And not have to pass on Roschon when I think he's a good value. But I'm not going to draft 6. I'm not going to eliminate myself from this format of fantasy football and eliminate myself from in these tournaments from being able to advance if should I make the cut because I wanted Roschon, and Roschon's a better pick than one of these other guys. So that's why my exposures to those guys aren't quite as high. It's simply because sometimes in these drafts, I'll get, mainly Roschon and Kendre Miller, 11th round, 12th round right now, respectively. My roster allocations simply aren't allowing me to take a running back once I get to that spot.
Yeah, we talked about it earlier in the show. You want to zig when others are zagging, but at the same time, if everyone's doing a certain team build in a certain way, there are times where you're going to have to ride.
And in best ball, Matt, in a best ball, Matt, you can't fix it once the season starts. You can't go trade him away to anybody else.
Him right there.
You can't fix it on waivers. You can't do any. You can't do any of that stuff.
None of the hustling matters later. Yeah. It's all draft, set it and forget it, that type of thing. Yeah, no doubt. But while I got you here, Roschon, you want him in your typical dynasty leagues or your season leagues. You want him in those formats, though.
Yes. Yeah, man.
Yes,
he's going to end up being the starting running back for the Bears. Yes.
People are nuts that they think Herbert is going to be some sort of volume dog with Chicago. He was great in his role when they had Demont.
Herbert's been a fine player. He's been good. He's been efficient. The team worries about his pass catching ability. They worry about him on third downs. They worry about him without the ball in his hands. That's never been anything that Deontay Foreman, even though I've stand for the Deontay Foreman's hands. I know his hands personally. I've seen him and his brother throw the football in my own front yard like years ago. Right. Like, the guy can catch, but NFL teams don't seem to trust him in that spot. Like you take Roschon Johnson for the way he can catch and the way he can pass protect. Like, they love him for that. So he's good. Roschon will be on the field doing that kind of stuff. And a player of Roschon's ilk, whenever he gets the opportunity to kind of start dipping his toe into, between the tackles work, early down work, they're going to get to see what he looks like with his 3-down skill set. And eventually it's going to be the Roschon thing with these other guys being more situational. Whereas it's going to start out with Roschon being the one who's certainly the most situational, because he's the one that they're going to trust in passing situations on third downs, et cetera.
Yeah, and an ascending offense, an offense that they're hoping takes another step as a whole. You're going to need the guys that can kind of do all of it like that, like Roschon. You don't necessarily want to have, just like a bunch of kind of mediocre guy. You want to truly push this thing forward, and Roschon, you think could be that guy. I mean, I'm for it. I'm into it.
Yeah, I mean, and he's a 12th round pick, and he's a 13th round pick in redraft. It's like if he doesn't hit, it's not going to kill you. Well, I mean, what's the opportunity cost?
Exactly. It's fair. It's a fair price to pay. It's kind of baked in there. All the worries you'd have about a player, like you said, you're not really wasting a top 10 pick or top 8 pick. But last question I have for you before we say goodbye on this beautiful, or just started raining over here in Massachusetts, so not so beautiful Saturday. Give us a rookie bold take.
Dude, a beautiful Saturday around here is when it rains. I need this lake level to come back up, dude. I need the lake to come up 12 feet so I can put my pontoon in, dude. It's crazy.
Yeah, baby.
Rookie bold take. Okay. I'll say that. Is it bold? I mean, is it bold to say that? How bold is this?
You want to workshop a bold take? Let's workshop it.
Jaden Reed outscores JSN and PPR in 2023.
Yes, that's a bold take. I think a lot of people stopped a lot of people dead in their tracks. Is that what? Fuck yeah, let's do it. I love that. That's going to be a wrap on the game plan today. Again, make sure you're subscribed to the Player Profile YouTube channel. Hit that like button, leave a comment. Alex, please tell everyone listening where they can get all of your content, where they can find you on socials, all that good stuff, where they can maybe see you as you're out there on your pontoon boat.
Yeah, I don't know about seeing me on the pontoon. Like I said, we need 12 feet into Lake Travis before that boat gets in the water, man.
Yeah.
You can hear me on Sirius XM Fantasy Sports Radio. I think starting in July, I'll be on a whole lot more often. We'll have some announcements with all that stuff. But we have the training camp tour and all that, where we'll be going to the different training camps, telling people how these things are looking with the depth charts, how things are looking with these players, making sure that you guys know everything that you need to know from somebody that's looking at this from a fantasy angle, as opposed to these beat writers that just care about reporting on the teams. Mm-hmm. You can hear all that on the channel, SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio. Also, the Roster Watch podcast. We get 2 or 3 podcasts a week. We're starting to get guests on now. Matt, we should get you on soon for sure, brother. And then on Twitter, so all the socials, man, YouTube, just it's at Roster Watch or / Roster Watch, and of course the websites where everything lives, rosterwatch.com. And some cool shit coming up, man, and certainly appreciate all of our subscribers. We couldn't do it without them, so appreciate appreciate you for having me on, dude.
Well, thank you very, very much. And, I'm gonna have to hold you to that. I would love to come on and hang out again. That's always a blast kicking with you. And I think what our listeners can take from this is that you 100% invited me to come out on that pontoon boat. Okay, that's going to wrap up the show. Again, you can find me on Twitter. I'm at Matty Kiwoom. You can get all my stuff at playerprofiler.com. Make sure you like and subscribe to this video. Join the Player Profiler Discord. We got a whole lot of great stuff going on there. And make sure you check out the executives on Patreon. That's Cody and I's executive Patreon. So check us out. That's patreon.com/executives, where you can find that. Keep game planning, my friends, and I'll catch y'all next week. Peace.